All right, welcome to JK Sports Talk. I had a whole event thing planned out. We can throw it in the air. The breaking news for the last 3 hours, my phone's been buzzing with news coming off. I thought legal tampering period was going to happen.
Yeah.
No, we are starting on Sunday. We are starting the week off strong with so much news. We have to start with the Seattle Seahawks. What is going on with the Seattle Seahawks? They traded the quarterback Geno Smith to the Raiders for a third round pick. Well, we have to get to that. That's insane. They weren't done. Let's be on top of the news story again. They cut long term Seahawk Tyler Lockett. He's a
Yep.
free agent. And just breaking news 2 hours ago, DK Metcalf is coming to my beloved Pittsburgh Steelers for a second round pick. Kevin, initial reaction. What do you got?
Well, my first question is I want to know, have you already ordered your DK Metcalf jersey? When you and I were working together, all we talked about was how Pittsburgh Steelers wide receivers, they start fantastic, they become a massive problem, and then they're traded away because Mike Tomlin and the locker room just couldn't handle them anymore. So you've kind of been like wearing thin on your George Pickens feelings, and now you have someone else to fall in love with. So have you already ordered your jersey, and is it a home or away jersey?
Oh, my heart. I don't. I can't believe it's actually true. This is such an un-Pittsburgh like move.
Incredibly. Yeah,
I don't even know what to do. And then they signed to a 5 year contract
massive.
for $150 million. Massive contract. Massive contract on that.
And
But
so,
let's back up a little bit to the first news
yeah,
we heard. Geno Smith being traded to the Raiders. There was speculation of Sam Bradford going to the Raiders. I mean, there's a lot of speculation. I think you picked Sam Darnold going to the Raiders. Aaron Rodgers has been kind of floated around there going to the Raiders. And they land Geno Smith.
yeah,
For a third round pick, I mean, I think if you'd rank free agent quarterbacks, he'd be the top guy. Like he would be I'm talking Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. He would be the top guy. And the Raiders locked him down for a third round pick.
it
Solid
makes sense.
numbers. I mean, Seahawks last 3 years 10-7, 9-8, 9-8. So solid record there. Um, it, let's go from the Raiders' perspective. I mean, as a division rival, what are your thoughts on Geno Smith coming to the division?
Well, it makes a lot of sense, first of all. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So this offseason has been the Raiders have been hitting a reset button, right? So they're getting a new GM, they've got a new coach, and Pete Carroll. Tom Brady's fingerprints are starting to be all over the Las Vegas Raiders organization. And I think this is a massive indicator of two things. One, they don't think that they're going to have a quarterback fall to them that they like in the draft, be it Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders. I know a lot of people have Sanders linked to the Raiders because of Tom Brady's relationship with the Sanders family. But I think more importantly, number two, I don't think the ownership and the brass with the Raiders actually think that there's a worthy quarterback coming out of this draft to where Geno Smith, he's familiar with Pete Carroll and that system. I think they're going to make it a very like run heavy team, and they already have the solid tight end there that you can get a lot of passes to. He just had that rookie record he set. I really just think that it makes too much sense. They're going to use Geno Smith as a kind of a bridge quarterback. They're not going to draft a quarterback this year. They're moving on to the 2026 draft, and they're going to look at that class instead. And Geno Smith is a perfect, he'll get you some wins. I think that it's a very competitive division. You mentioned how he had 3 seasons of 10 wins, 9 wins, and 9 wins. That was the NFC West. This is the AFC West. So I'm going to be really interested and intrigued to see how he does against those teams. I think it's probably one of the toughest, if not the toughest division in football. So I don't know if he's going to fare as well as he did with Seattle, going up against the Cardinals twice a year. The Niners were tough, not this year so much, but they've been tough for a while. But the Rams have been hit or miss. So I think it's going to be a challenge for him, but I think it's just a real indicator that the Raiders are not going to draft a quarterback this year.
You're convinced they're not. I'm not convinced they're not. I think it gives them options. So with with teams ahead of them who need quarterbacks, I don't think they could sit where they were at and expect to get a quarterback. I think if one of those guys falls to them, they take him. It doesn't. It makes them so they don't have to trade up. Because I think a first and a third wouldn't move you from where they're at to a top three pick to have to get a quarterback. I think if Sir Sanders falls there, I don't think that they don't. I still think they take him. I don't think he's going to fall to them, but now they don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. And that's kind of my point is that I think that they looked into trading up. And
Yeah.
I think it was too expensive. And then this is just a no-brainer. We give up a third-round pick for someone who already knows Pete Carroll's system. He's obviously a good locker room guy and someone that Pete Carroll appreciates as a part of his culture. So he walks in there and he immediately establishes the new Raider way as, Seattle East. And they can just start rebuilding the, offense from the inside out. But I really genuinely think that Ward and Sanders are going to be off the board within the top 5. Raiders weren't going to trade up. So if they do take a quarterback this year, we're talking day 2 to day 3. So I really genuinely think this is a stopgap and hey, we're going to go ahead and start evaluating the quarterbacks in the 2026 draft. Because at the very least, we'll be competitive. We'll start resetting the culture a little bit. But between Ward and Sanders, they just knew they didn't have the ammunition or the desire to trade up anymore. So we'll see.
And I wouldn't be surprised second round, like a Jackson Dart falls to him. They take one of those kind of second tier guys. I think second makes a lot of sense. They can sit behind Geno Smith for a couple of years because Geno Smith is 34 years old. Let's not kid ourselves. He's the best available option out there, 100%. He's 34 years old. They're going to need someone to take this place. So, be that second round pick, or is that push it back down the road a little bit to next year? But I think that eliminates the other free agent options that have been discussed for the Raiders for sure. From a Seahawks standpoint, I think you have to talk in the totality of what's happening with them. You have no quarterback. You have Sam Howell as your starting quarterback right now. You just got rid of your top 2 receivers. I mean, maybe not top two or three. With Smith and Jigba still there, still a great receiving option there. But DK Metcalf physically is a beast. You're a long-term guy. Tyler Lockett. Take me in the mind of a Seahawks fan. What are you seeing there?
Well, and you mentioned the survivor guilt, right? The wide receiver that's left. He actually posted on Twitter in the midst of all this something that I can't really repeat here, but he seems to, at the very least, be confused, if not upset at these moves too. So
yeah.
I think if you're coming from the Seattle standpoint, you've been mediocre and contending in a very weak division, haven't really got over the hump. I think it's more they feel like they're confident in their coach and the direction that they're going, and it's time to maybe reset the cupboard a little bit. And I've seen some reports this weekend, ever since the Geno Smith piece happened, that maybe they're going after Sam Darnold. And the one thing that would back that up, right? So you just got rid of Metcalf, you cut Lockett, you're freeing up your cap a little bit. I know you have dead cap and everything else, but you're freeing up some of the.
So currently, based on cap, with the DK Metcalf trade, they're about $72 million in cap space.
Yeah. I in preparation for this podcast, I had all the salary cap numbers here, and then everything that happened today, I just kind of threw it away myself. So I feel like it's a kind of a move to where perhaps they're going to try to make a splash that way. And because they feel like with their roster constructed how it is, they're a 10-win team, a 9-win team, and a 9-win team, right? The 49ers are starting to, they've pushed paying everybody or pushed all these contracts down the road to where, the Bills do. They're having to pay the piper now, and they're going to have to pay Purdy, to where that window could potentially be slamming shut, and they may have to be doing some sort of a reset themselves as far as the cap conversation goes. The Seahawks, it seems like they're going ahead and doing these moves, and they're going to go a little bit younger, but they're going to go and get a quarterback that, in the same kind of youth movement kind of mindset. They're trying to reset, but also push the needle a little bit because they feel like maybe they can contend in that division this year. But Geno Smith, they've seen a ceiling for years now, and it was time to move on. And as soon as he's gone, Metcalf wants out. They'd already cut Lockett, which that's something that's been rumored for a long time.
Yeah, it has.
They're doing a soft reset. I think that they still have even though there's a lot of unknowns right now, I could see them making a splash starting tomorrow in free agency. And there's still a lot of wide receivers out there. Obviously, Darnold. You could also go and get Darnold. You have the money to pay him now. And then in the draft, you got a little bit of return for Metcalf. So now you can go ahead and make a noise there and maybe get one of the really good running backs in this class.
Metcalf and Smith. You got an extra second and third round pick.
Right. So you can very quickly reset the cupboard, I think. They don't seem like they're rebuilding. They haven't been making sweeping moves everywhere. It just looks like they made a couple of, getting younger moves on offense.
I mean, when you're your starting quarterback and your top receiver, it's hard for me not to think you are rebuilding.
Depends on who walks in.
Depends on who they bring in. We'll go over the quarterback, kind of free agent quarterback situation here in a little bit. Something I thought was interesting was, so Mike Macdonald's the current head coach of the Seahawks, right. Former DC of the Ravens. New offensive coordinator is Clint Kubiak from the Saints.
Yep.
Derek Carr?
Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold. We'll touch on that. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but the quarterback kind of play that quarterback carousel. I mean, it is definitely starting with the fall. Some other kind of breaking news. Just want to kind of touch over that.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of go to the beginning of the offseason, kind of go through, what the different stages were, franchise tag and things like that. Other big signing, Myles Garrett's back with the Browns. He got a new contract, $40 million a year. Josh Allen just signed an extension with the Bills. 6 years, $330 million. Devontae Adams to the Rams, 2 years, $46 million. Things are happening on Sunday. Football is a Sunday sport. Doesn't lie in the offseason. It keeps on rolling.
Legal tampering period eve.
Yes. So let's back up a little bit this week. We had teams designating franchise tags. And I've been a football fan for years on end. You've always heard the franchise tag. I don't know how much you know about it. I had to dive into a little bit about it. This is kind of go through some things I kind of learned about it. Do you know what's originally known as the slogan? It's the Elway rule. As a Broncos fan, it's the Elway rule.
All right.
So it was established in 1993. We're gonna break the franchise tag down now. That's kind of what we do. News segment every week, breaking it down. This week's the franchise tag. So established 1993. New CBA was created. This CBA created free agency, and the salary cap. So it was a big CBA time in '93. Pat Bowlen was terrified to lose John Elway, so he refused to sign the CBA as an owner until he got some sort of guarantee and keep Elway. So they established the franchise tag as well as the transition tag. So you have two different types of tags here. Transition tags obviously a lot less known about. And then transition tag, basically, you can designate to one player. They basically allows the team who tagged them the right of first refusal to re-sign the player. If they don't match it, they don't get any compensation, though. Then that player gets the average of the top 10 salaries of their position for that. Franchise tag, you have two different types of franchise tag. You have an exclusive and you have a non-exclusive franchise tag. So the most common is going to be the non-exclusive franchise tag, which allows players to negotiate with other teams. The original team can match the offer. However, if that team does not match the offer, the team who signed the player has to give the old team 2 first-round picks. It has happened in the past, so it's not crazy for it to happen. And then the player can be franchise tagged 3 times throughout their entire career. And it increases from the second to third one on that. So there's been 3 major changes in the franchise tag over the course of its history. The first one was 2006, Walter Jones, which franchise tag for his third year in a row. At that time, the pay stayed the same. It was 120% of the last year's salary. Third year is like, I'm tired of being tagged and wants to change that. So now how it's set up is the third year is either 144% of the last year's salary or the average top 5 salaries in their position. Year 1 and year 2 are top 5 at their position or 120% of their previous year's salary. So that was the first change in the franchise tag. Second one was in 2012. Drew Brees argued the franchise tag is team independent. So this is where it's 3 times your entire career, not 3 times with one team.
Mm-hmm.
He argued that and he won on that. And then 2018, there has been some disputes over positions. So Terrell Suggs in 2008 argued he was more of a defensive end, which was getting paid a lot more than linebackers at that time. And now that position is kind of seen hybrid, more of an edge position. Outside linebackers are getting paid more than DNs and stuff like that a lot of times. Depends on the position there. And then that team that was just settled outside. The team and him made an agreement. No president was sent there. In 2014, Jimmy Graham argued he was a wide receiver, not a tight end. He lost that dispute. So those are kind of the 3 major kind of challenges or changes to the franchise tag. And then the alternative for a player, if they don't want to sign the franchise tag, they can sit out. We saw this with Le'Veon Bell with the Steelers. He didn't want to do the franchise tag. He sat out, ended up going to the Jets. Also in 1997, so very early on the franchise tag, Sean Gilbert was franchise tag. He sat out. They re-tagged him in 1998. He eventually signed an offer sheet with Carolina that wasn't matched, so Carolina sent 2 first-round picks to Washington. That's kind of a brief kind of breaking down what the franchise tag actually is. I'm kind of bringing all the different things to it on there. One thing I forgot to mention here, the exclusive franchise tag is a lot less common. It's only been used 4 times in the franchise tag history. Drew Brees, Von Miller, Le'Veon Bell, and Kirk Cousins all were exclusively franchise tag. A lot of times this happens with players who teams are willing to give up 2 first-round picks to get the guy. So obviously those are big names. 2 quarterbacks, the most dominant pass rusher, Von Miller at the time, and Le'Veon Bell, who is the best running back at the time as well. So the kind of going this year, we saw just 2 players get franchise tag this year. We saw T. Higgins get franchise tag.
Again.
And again.
Yep.
Yes. So next year will be a lot more expensive. And then we also saw Trey Smith from Kansas City get franchise tag as well. And there was no transition tags this year. So this is the lowest amount of players to get franchise tag in 21 years. So that can mean a couple different things. Teams are kind of being, more aware. Hey, this contract's coming up. Let's make a decision. Quickly move off players. Get those contracts done before they have to hit.
Well, that just happened today as well. Because if you look, we're talking about all this breaking news and everything. We saw not only some cuts, but we saw a lot of extensions with teams too. A lot of middle linebackers that I know the Broncos were looking at. They just got re-signed by their
Nick Bolton.
Yep,
Nick re-signed.
I know the Jets re-signed their guy. They got their guy back. That was someone that the Broncos were, in my opinion, should have been looking at the very least.
Yep.
As far as for middle linebacker. So, yeah, to your point, it could just be
the Cardinals just did with Baron Browning. He re-signed as well.
So a lot of people
Zach
like
Ertz,
not doing tag, but doing it right.
Mike Gesicki.
And that with T. Higgins, I really hope the Bengals know what they're doing, because with Hubbard and Hendrickson, it seems that they're kind of going for. I saw one analyst on Twitter said, looks like Cincinnati's going with the firepower on offense and orange traffic cone on defense strategy. Putting all the ball is dangerous.
Even offensively, T. Higgins is the Band-Aid. on that position. You have Jamar Chase, who's going to want top wide receiver money. Can you afford to pay $70 million that wide receiver room? You know what I mean?
If they do, the Denver Broncos after the Super Bowl actually ran into an issue like that where they signed an extension to Demaryius Thomas and to Emmanuel Sanders. It ended up eventually, it wasn't the only reason the team was hurting in the post-Manning era, but it was something where there was so much money tied up to their wide receiver room. It did end up hurting them in other ways. So I feel like Cincinnati really does seem to be pouring all their money into trying to make their quarterback happy and just going for, bargain deals on the other side of the ball, which I don't know how good that's going to work going against Lamar twice a year. I know you just got DK Metcalf. I'm not sure how many yards he'll have this year with Justin Fields overthrowing him, but,
we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
But, it's an interesting strategy, but didn't mean to divert from the franchise.
They're losing their slot corner, Mike Hilton, as well. He's been there for a number of years, former Steeler. He's also being off the Bengals. So yeah, what's the plan there? It's tough. So kind of next steps in the NFL offseason. We just had the franchise tag, so we starting tomorrow, or I guess tonight. Legal tampering for teams to sign contracts. Free agent begins on Wednesday, so teams can. All these deals are not real, but real. At the end of the month, we have the annual league meetings. Then on the 24th of April, we have the NFL draft. And then the first day of May, teams can exercise their fifth-year options, which we'll go with fifth-year options probably in the next episode of the following one, kind of breaking that down, what that looks like, what that fifth-year option does, what power gives to who can be franchise, who can be fifth-year option, what draft picks, what it looks like for the team, the player. We'll kind of dive that. We'll break that down in either the next one or the following episodes. Depends on how crazy this next week's going to be on that. So that kind of brings us up to where we stand now in the NFL offseason timeline. So we got free agency hours away. The sexy position's quarterback. Let's start with quarterbacks. The first, what we talked about, Geno Smith, has landed. What's next? What's going on? I think to me, as a diehard Steelers fan, the Steelers thing's next. You mentioned Justin Fields. It's been going on too long. I don't think that contract gets done with Justin Fields. I think he leaves. Diana Rossini just this posted the Steelers are expected to make an offer to Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold coming to Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense to me. There's a lot of talk before he went to Minnesota, him coming to Pittsburgh. I think this time it happens. The owner was very upset in the offseason. His press conference, he's a quiet man, stands back. He was not happy with the exit last year. They're looking to make changes. They're looking to make a difference. They made the DK Metcalf deal. I don't think you pay all that money to DK Metcalf to have Justin Fields as your quarterback, who didn't throw for over 150 yards in the games he played last season. You bring a quarterback, get the ball down the field.
So the one reason I think that Sam Darnold's not your guy in Pittsburgh is because he's also going to require a lot of money to be going towards him, right, on this free agent deal. And you guys just paid Metcalf $150 million over the next 5 years or so. The reason I think that this actually opens the door for Seattle, you mentioned earlier that the new OC in Seattle happens to be Clint Kubiak. Mm-hmm. Clint Kubiak and Sam Darnold were on the 49ers staff in 2023, right? So there's a connection there. I would almost wonder, does Sam Darnold, after doing what he did with Minnesota, look at the AFC North with the Ravens, the Browns, and say, yeah, I can go there. Yeah, they got DK and, we'll see who else they get, but I can go there and make a difference. Or does he look at Seattle, who with Geno Smith had the season he had and the last 3 seasons, to be fair? The Cardinals are a team that seem to sometimes look like they're a flash in the pan and look okay, fall apart. The 49ers are, I believe, on the downward trend. I think that them getting rid of Debo, it's only the beginning. I think it's going to slowly start to fall apart, especially when they have to pay Purdy. I think the Seattle Seahawks window, especially with them going for youth movement on defense, on offense, I think their window's actually about to open up a little bit, depending on what they do in free agency and their draft. If you have Sam Darnold working with Clint Kubiak, if Clint Kubiak is singing his praises enough, I think that's actually the move. They just freed up a lot of cap space. They have the ability to still make a little bit of noise in free agency and then go younger with the draft, especially with their extra capital from the DK trade. So I think that you could actually see Seattle poaching Darnold from the Vikings, which opens up something else that I've been hoping for a long time with Minnesota.
We can dive into that. We can dive into that next.
Yeah. I will say when we did this last episode and when you and I went through the quarterbacks, we've kind of been striking out left and right there. The only thing we've got right so far is it seems like the Saints are going to keep Derek Carr, but you and I both had the Jets keeping Rodgers. Aaron Glenn shut that down. You
did have Andy Dalton correctly going back to the Panthers, so you do have one up on me right now.
There's one. There's one. So really it's 2-1. But I mean, I had Sam Darnold going to the Raiders. That's not happening. You had Russell Wilson staying with the Raiders. That's not happening. I'm sorry. Them going to the Raiders. That's not happening. I know you and I both have been going back and forth with the Steelers. The Steelers are not keeping Russell Wilson, so that's one that I'm going to mess up as well. And I know you're saying you don't think Justin Fields will be back, so we could be kind of over. Sam Darnold, the Clint Kubiak connection is the one that makes me think Sam Darnold might go west again. He was already in that division. I feel like it's a weaker division than the AFC North, and I think Sam Darnold knows that this is the time to cash out, but this is also the time to see what else he can do. And I don't think that Seattle is as talented as Minnesota yet, but they're not terribly far off. I feel like going to Pittsburgh in that division, that's just I don't know if that's going to be what Sam Darnold wants to do, per se.
But you look at Sam Darnold, he had obviously Justin Jefferson and he had Jordan Addison. And coming to Pittsburgh, he'd have DK Metcalf, George Pickens on that. Two different, very, very, very different set of wide receivers. They're not the same skill sets at all, but still two big powerhouse things. I just think with Steelers not getting a deal done before the tampering period, there's a lot of speculation that the Jets are going to make a big offer to Justin Fields. I don't think Pittsburgh wants to get in that big money game. I don't think they want to pay him $20, $25 million a year. I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to be $15, $18 million range. And when you go up the market, I think it's going to be blown out of the water. I'm also not fully convinced Darnold leaves Minnesota. I've heard reports that they're working. They didn't franchise tag him because they wanted to get a more long-term deal done, like a 2-year deal. Obviously, most of the money front-loaded that first year gives him flexibility in the second year. But also, his value dropped a lot in those last 2 games he played. Teams saw him get beat by the Lions really bad. And then he played 2 really bad games. I don't think that second game was his fault. They played the Commanders, correct, in the playoffs. No, it was the Rams. It was the Rams. He got sacked 9 times. He that offensive line was a picket fence. Like people just running right through it. Like it was a joke. He had no power in that at all. I think that first game, but what I've heard is that number, which I thought was going to be on $40 million a year, isn't going to be near $40 million a year. It's much more manageable, probably 20 to 25 million. It's kind of the number I've been hearing floating around, which makes it more manageable. I would like him to go to the Seahawks. That'd be interesting. It makes a lot of sense for him, but from Donald's perspective, you're leaving top 2 receivers for a running back. I mean, they have Kenneth Gainwell.
Kenneth Walker.
Kenneth Walker. and Smith-Njigba, so young movement. But also you got to think about the kind of prove your point. What are the Seahawks going to do at quarterback? They draft 18th this year in the draft, so no quarterbacks falling there. You would think. As another free agent guy is, let's say Donald doesn't go there. What do you see them doing at quarterback for the Seahawks?
I honestly don't see what they're doing. The whole reason, really, because the whole reason that I think it's going to be Darnold is because, the weekend before free agency starts, out of the blue, they're trading Geno, they're cutting Lockett, they're trading DK.
But they had money before. They had $62 million before they traded me a cap, everything.
But it seems aggressive. And the reason it's something where if they wanted to keep DK, they could have told him, whatever promise they wanted to tell him. But when he requested the trade, they said, yep, no problem. It really seems aggressive. I'd feel like they wouldn't be doing this unless they had something else in their arsenal. Yes. Yeah. I feel like they have one in the chamber here that no one sees yet. And that's the whole reason I think that is just because you don't take a team that went 10 wins, 9 wins, 9 wins, and get rid of 3 of your starters when you don't need to. There was no reason to do this, right? So it makes me feel as if they're really going for a youth movement, but because of how much money they have now in free agency, I still think they're going to make a splash, right? I mean, I know that Ayuk has been wanting out of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Alan Lazard, he hasn't had really a great time in New York, but I know he's been shopped to the Broncos previously, as recently as 2 years ago. And then you have Garrett Wilson, who's wanted out of New York, right? He's only 24. Couldn't you see a scenario where you go out and you're like, okay, Clint Kubiak, you really think that Darnold's the guy? Maybe Clint Kubiak is telling the Seahawks organization, like, hey, I was there in San Francisco. I watched and coached Brock Purdy, but I felt like Sam Darnold had a higher ceiling. And if I was in charge instead of Kyle out there, I would have been starting Darnold. And he's available. Go get him for me. And maybe because they got rid of Geno and there was a little bit of a youth movement, maybe that's when DK said, like, I don't want to be around for this experiment. Get me out of here, right? So I just think that the only logical reason they would be doing this is if they had Darnold in mind. Because when you look at the other top quarterbacks in the free agent class, 2 of them were Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, which they had iffy years at best. You have Aaron Rodgers. We talked about him plenty. Daniel Jones, I still firmly think that he might actually be the veteran re-sign with Minnesota if they decide to just stick with McCarthy, who should be coming back from injury, if they really want to hand the keys to the kid with a 14-win team. I personally have wanted Aaron Rodgers to go there just because I think for the popcorn reasons, right?
You've been on that platform all offseason. I'll give you that. You're sticking to your guns.
It's perfect, right? It's the person who's desperately wanting to be out of Brett Favre's shadow has followed his career almost to the year the whole way. So it'd just be beautiful to go to the Vikings, which are a 14-win team with that offensive line, those weapons, and he's going to be in a dome again. He's not going to be outside. He's 41, and then he'd be able to stick it to the Packers twice a year, which would make him happy, and he always beats the Bears, so that wouldn't change anything. He could just lose to the Lions twice a year, but the Vikings were doing that anyway. So for me, I selfishly want Brett Favre. I'm sorry. See, Aaron Rodgers, it's too perfect. But besides that, you have Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, Marcus Mariota, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mac Jones. Like, these names aren't screaming good, right? And that's why I feel like the Seahawks, to do this so aggressively, they do not have a top pick. So it's not that they're going for youth movement because they got a quarterback they want to draft and they're real excited about it. This seems directionless, unless, of course, there's a direction we don't see yet. And that direction, in my opinion, is Sam Darnold. And I think that Clint Kubiak, since being hired there, he's been the one really pushing this. And I could see them going more to like a West Coast offense, like even more than they already were, but just run the ball. Sam Darnold did good with Kevin O'Connell, who was also from the, that general tree of coaches. It just, for me, makes too much sense. If Sam Darnold went to Pittsburgh, it would almost kind of be like you're asking him to do something that, yes, maybe he could excel at with the weapons around him, but they run a different style out there. If he goes back to an offensive coordinator that knows him really well, and maybe they already have that kind of like a good relationship, that it just makes too much sense to me. But we've been wrong so far with most everything we predicted, so we'll see.
And to kind of solidify your point there, you figured there would have been a market for Geno Smith. They could have sent him other places. They sent him to a place that was in the Sam Darnold market to take one team out of that market. Because you could have said the Giants would have taken him all day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the Jets obviously would not have because we're not living that. He would have not gone back there. Maybe, Sam Darnold's probably not going to either New York team to go back there and live that again.
Probably not.
But they traded him to a team who was going to be a competitor for them in the open market, who had a lot more money than they had in open cap.
Who had his previous coach? It's his
Yes.
previous coach there too. It's the
It
best
makes a lot
part,
of sense. I wouldn't be surprised. I selfishly want him to go to Pittsburgh because I think he's way better than Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. I don't want to go through another season one of those, but I'm going to have to. It may seem, but the Seahawks make a lot of sense for him there. So we kind of with that we'll pencil him in to Seattle. So we got Geno Smith in Vegas. We've got Sam Darnold in Seattle. Where is the next? We'll say the next big domino. I think that leaves Justin Fields back in Pittsburgh. He's probably the next biggest name. Would you agree?
Potentially. The thing about, so I kind of had this thought last week, and I've been feeling it for a little bit, and I've started to see some mock drafts that have supported that. I feel like the New York Giants, when they decided to keep their GM and their coach, they're doing the whole swing for the fences, go get that, rookie quarterback that's going to either make you guys look like geniuses or going to get you fired next year, but they're going to be fired next year anyway if they don't do something, right? I thought a while ago, I think you and I texted about it a little bit, I think the Giants are going to trade with the Titans to get the number 1 overall pick to draft Cam Ward, number 1 overall in the draft.
Okay.
I think Justin Fields profiles as who Brian Daboll would like to have as a veteran / bridge guy there who we could have a rookie compete against. You're not going out in free agency and getting someone who's actually going to make the fans love that person more than your number 1 overall pick. But he does give you a little bit of our rookie quarterback's just not ready yet. We're going to put Justin Fields out there for the first month of the season until Cam Ward's ready to go. And then look out, I've recreated Josh Allen 2.0, right? That's, I think, what Brian Daboll's mindset is. Agreed. I still firmly think that Justin Fields is going to New York. I know a lot of people have Aaron Rodgers maybe going to the Giants instead of the Jets. I really genuinely feel like, just like we talked about, everything in the NFL is fit. Everything in the NFL is relationship.
Yep.
I firmly think Aaron Rodgers to Minnesota actually is starting to make too much sense for it not to happen. I don't think for him, he's going to want to go back to the exact same stadium he's been at for the last 2 years and just put on the color blue instead of the color green. I don't think he has any interest in going to New York. So I feel like Justin Fields is going to be the pick for the Giants because that'll be the perfect bridge guy before Cam Ward is ready.
Okay. So double dipping. You have the Giants getting both Justin Fields and then Cam Ward.
Yeah. I originally thought it was it was going to fall because Carter and Travis Hunter being at the top of the draft. I actually personally feel that the Giants are desperate enough, right? They just watched Saquon Barkley win the Super Bowl with the Eagles. Mm-hmm. They saw over and over again how that, hard knocks thing where the GM is getting advice from his son about drafting Jaden Daniels, and he didn't do that. And, if he goes to the Eagles, I won't be able to sleep. And he goes to the Eagles. I think the Giants organization is going to be so desperate to reset everything and get things in the right direction, I think they actually trade up to number 1 so they for sure get their guy because they are terrified of losing their jobs and they don't want to be the laughing stock anymore. I know I originally had Shedeur Sanders being a Giant. I think that Cam Ward kind of fits as far as his like physicality. I think it kind of fits more what Brian Dable had with Josh Allen at the beginning days. I think Shedeur Sanders is actually going to be a Cleveland Brown, but we can get into that later.
Yeah, so you made some interesting points there. I guess my question is, if your job's on the line, you're not going to want to sit that rookie quarterback and have the veteran there. You want to say, "Hey, this is my guy. I'm good. Look at the progress of the rookie I drafted." So my only issue is I don't think they're going to get both. I think they're going to get one. I think they get one or the other. I think they get Justin Fields. I could see, or Cam. Well, I don't think they get both. And the more you kind of put in my head a couple days ago about your for sure move is the Giants moving up from 3-1. I think that makes a lot of sense for them. I think the Titans makes a lot of sense for the Titans to move back a little bit, get more picks. It makes sense for both teams. Now, are both teams going to act rationally and do what's best for their franchise? We don't know. We don't know. But you see Justin Fields a Giant. I think with Darnold going to Seattle to be penciled in, I don't think Pittsburgh lets Fields leave. If Darnold signs quickly, I think he will. Pittsburgh's not going to let Fields leave because they're going to want because they don't have Fields. I mean that Russell Wilson's not coming back. He's had arguments and disputes, a lot of back and forth with the offensive coordinator, with the team. Like that's just not a good fit there. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to leave without Justin Fields and
Maybe,
Darnold.
maybe not.
I think Fields is making them pay more for not putting him back in to the lineup at the end of last season.
I
It's
actually
like
was thinking.
I was 5-2 and you took me out. I'll make you feel a lot more.
So I actually, the whole reason I think that he's not going back to Pittsburgh is for that reason exactly. I think Justin Fields sees that he has a smartphone just like we do, right? He sees that they're flirting with Sam Darnold or all the reports of Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh, which I still think that's ridiculous, but he sees everything we do, right? We just talked about at the beginning of this podcast, we talked about how everybody's getting re-signed and how only 2 people were franchise tagged, right? If the Steelers loved him, they would have re-signed him. If they loved him, they wouldn't have benched him for Russell Wilson. They would have done this a long time ago. I think for Fields, he got traded from Chicago to Pittsburgh. He's ready to just hit the open market. He's ready to just I'm going to choose my team. I'm not going to let the team choose for me. And if Pittsburgh liked me enough, they want to bench me, and then they would have already re-signed me. Like my phone's been available for that ring all offseason, right? So I actually think that he might be having them kind of bid for him. I think he looks at Brian Dable. Let's just say the Giants are looking at Justin Fields seriously, right? He looks at Brian Dable and he's like, what did he do with an inaccurate running quarterback fresh out of Wyoming as a rookie? Okay, he could probably give me some advice because maybe Justin Fields thinks, what, I'm not that far off. I just need someone to recognize my talents, right? So he looks at Dable as like, he's going to get the best out of me. And that I can do that. I can actually go in there. I can have Malik Neighbors and I can actually throw to that guy and we can just light up the league, right? Maybe he sees that. And even though the Steelers are starting to get some offensive weapons there, I actually think Justin Fields is ready to just choose instead of be chosen for, right? So that's why I think that he moves on. And as far as you saying that you don't think the Giants get both, my only rebuttal to that would be the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal and then drafted Michael Penix in the top 10 of the NFL draft. I feel like the Giants right now, free agency is first. They haven't traded for the number 1 pick yet. That's something that maybe they're negotiating, but they can solve their quarterback temporary problem right now, sign Justin Fields, get him in, and then work on that deal. Because if they don't get that deal, Cam Ward, who they like, might already be off the board, right? So I think they do both. And I think the Falcons proved you can do both, even if it looks really stupid at the time, hindsight or anything. And I just think the Giants organization right now is so desperate for a win because of all the ridicule they got. Everybody's on their last chance with that organization to where if they don't go out swinging, they're going to go out anyway. And the one thing you never want to do in any profession is strike out looking, right? You want to
leave one in the chamber.
Yes. So I think they are actually looking at this like, let's go ahead and get our bridge guy, because there's not one person in New York. If you drafted Cam Ward #1 overall, there's no one in New York that's going to be upset if the rookie starts over your veteran, right? You don't
Until week 1.
I just don't think that, with Atlanta, you had Cousins and you had Penix, right? You couldn't go to Penix right away, even if you thought he was more talented. You had to do Cousins because of the money and because of the pedigree, right? But if you have Fields and Ward, if you tell the media week 1 that, hey, Ward's our starter, no one cares. Everybody's like, yeah, he should be, right? But if you have Justin Fields as the starter, again, I'm kind of looking at like how the Giants are going to react, right? You and I both agree. If you draft someone #1 overall, kind of like the Bears did, they came out very quickly and said Caleb Williams is our starter, right? A lot of people were upset. It's like, oh, he didn't earn it. I'm actually the mindset, like, if you have a direction, you should just say that at the beginning and you should go for it, right?
Yeah. Push all the chips in.
Correct. But I'm not the New York Giants. I'm not ridiculed for an entire year over every decision I'd made or didn't make, and the laughingstock of the league, getting rid of Daniel Jones midway through the season because you benched him, even though he was a year away from signing that long deal. You've made mistake after mistake after mistake. There's no reason to think they're not going to be a little bit desperate and irrational, since that's how they've been running the franchise anyway. So I could see them getting the Fields Ward combination. I could even see them starting Fields because they just don't know what they're doing. And they're so concerned that Ward's not going to be ready that they don't want to put him in, have him get messed up, because then they know they're not going to make it to the end of the season. And it's going to be another coach that gets Cam Ward and Malik Neighbors and everybody they've drafted. So I'm just more banking on the ineptitude and the desperation of the Giants franchise to make these kind of moves. And if it pays off, it pays off. And then they're going to look like geniuses, right? The 49ers traded 3 first-round picks to go get Trey Lance, who is going to be a backup on his third team pretty soon here, like in a matter of hours, right?
Yeah.
But they hit on Brock Purdy, so the GM and the coach have their jobs regarded as some of the top in the business. But they spent 3 first-round picks to trade up and grab a guy that was an absolute bust, right?
Yeah.
All you need is for one person to hit, and history remembers you as the ones who, found the diamond in the rough. So they're going to be desperate. They're going to do both. That's my prediction, but we'll see.
My last comment, move on, next quarterback, is if you're Justin Fields, do you want to go to a team knowing they're probably going to take a quarterback from the draft, knowing that you have a 1-year span of that team, and then you're probably going to be pushed out? No matter if you do good or bad, that rookie quarterback sitting there. You're in the New York market where everything you do, if you do one thing wrong, the media's like, get the rookie in here, get Cam Ward in there.
Yes,
that's my only hesitation towards that. Would be
Joel, if you can't bet on yourself, then no one's going to bet on you. All Justin Fields has to do is he has to look at the guy we've talked about this entire night, Sam Darnold, who signed a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Minnesota Vikings.
Knowing he was a backup.
Knowing he thought probably with the 11th overall pick, they were going to draft a quarterback, right? A lot of people in the draft leading up to it had them penciled as taking J.J. McCarthy or any of the other quarterbacks that slid. So he went there banking on.
But Sam Darnold was a backup before that. He was a backup just trying to compete for a job.
So was Fields last year.
Yeah.
He only started because Russell got hurt.
Yeah.
That's the only reason he started, right? I think he looks at Sam Darnold and he's like, he picked his coach. Darnold picked Kevin O'Connell to get the best out of him, and he's about to make $40 million a year, maybe, tops. But anywhere between 30 and 40. I think that Justin Fields probably still feels like he's never been with a coach that's actually got the best out of him and his talents, right? I think he looks at, if the Giants are calling, I think he looks at what he did with Josh Allen. I think he says, all I need is 1 year. Go ahead and draft your guy. I'm going to beat him out. I'm going to be the next Josh Allen. Malik Neighbors and I are going to rule the league. And then don't sign me. Let me go and pick my own team again next year. I think that's the move for him because he still believes he can start. He's just had kind of a rough go of it his first 2 teams in the NFL, right? Because if we remember, he was traded for, but then the Wilson deal had it was very similar as far as I think it was Wilson first and then Fields, right?
Yep.
So even that trade, he went to Pittsburgh knowing that, well, you guys just got Russell Wilson as your starter. You got me to compete, right?
Yes.
And then he only
But Tomlin, it wasn't really a competition though. Tomlin mentioned Wilson's got pole position, which he loves to say, as a starter.
right.
So I think he knew going into that with that.
So I think because of that, I think that Fields, he was drafted by the Bears to be the starter. That didn't work. He was traded to the Steelers to compete, but basically be a backup. And then as soon as Russell was healthy, he was replaced. I think with New York, he's looking at the Darnold, Kevin O'Connell method of I just need a coach to get the best out of me, and then I'm going to make bank and choose my own team in a year. And if it's the Giants, great. But if it's not,
so you mentioned that he goes to the Giants. I could see him going to another New York team, the Jets, for all the same reason you said. But he's gonna be the guaranteed starter there rather than being competing for that. I think Justin Fields doesn't want to compete. I think he wants to be the starter walking in. I think the Jets can make sense for him.
yeah, absolutely.
Defensive head coach, secure the ball. He did a really good job that last year. Didn't throw any interception at that. He goes to be the starter there with that running game with Brees Hall. Garrett Wilson gives him number one receiver. I could see that more in the Giants. I don't see him going to the Giants. I don't think he wants to compete with a team drafting a quarterback that early, almost guaranteed. Almost the same reason why I know you mentioned earlier this year Kirk Cousins going to the Browns. Kirk Cousins has been very open. I'm waiting until after the draft to make my decision. I'm not going to team to draft a quarterback right after you sign me. And he's super cheap. So that puts him in play for a lot of different teams for Kirk Cousins as well. But kind of wrapping up with Justin Fields, I can't get there with you on the Giants. I get you on the Jets, or I can get you there with the Steelers for that. Moving on from Justin Fields, we have a couple of quarterbacks there. Your boy and my former boy, we share a common mutual quarterback, Russell Wilson. With him, with Geno Smith going to the Raiders, I think it takes him out of the Raiders mix. Where could he go?
I think he could be Sierra's roadie. Just I don't really see a team that wants to take that on. I think they see it as he just went to Pittsburgh. He went to Mike Tomlin, who is regarded as an excellent coach.
Mm-hmm.
And with that offensive line, with the running game, with George Pickens, with that defense, every single person watched him start hot and every single person watched him tail off.
Yeah.
And every single person has probably heard reports about how he and his offensive coordinator maybe didn't get along once again.
Yep.
I don't know who he goes to because he's still, in my opinion, and this is just based on everything his team, that his own media team puts out, he still sees himself as the guy.
Starter.
If you look at the entire NFL, besides obvious teams like, the Jets don't have a guy.
Yeah.
The Titans are still deciding on if they really do or don't have a guy, and we'll see what happens this draft, right? The Browns, I mean, you could argue are still looking for their guy, even though they're paying a guy that they don't like a lot of money because they, got
He's also out all next season.
right. So I don't know where Russell goes.
I think there's a team that could make some sense. I don't have him going here. I actually have Daniel Jones going here. The Indianapolis Colts. Someone who can push Anthony Richardson maybe win the starting job. I don't think. I think I agree. I don't think Russell Wilson walks into many positions and is given the starting quarterback position. I think he has to kind of earn a little bit more. I like Daniel Jones better the Colts than Russell Wilson, but that could make a sense. I don't think that the Titans do that. I don't think the Titans want to mess. I think the Titans are going to give it to Will Levis one more year. I don't think you want to mess with his psyche on that. I think you want to let him do what he can do. For the Titans, I don't think you go there, but the Colts make a lot of sense in that situation. Um, that's really the only spot that I kind of see that possibly makes sense for him. If we're giving, I mean, I could see the same thing mentioned by Justin Field. I could see Russell Wilson going to the Giants too. Um, Big market. Sierra's a big star. New York City, hopping city, all that stuff. Maybe, but I think he goes there to compete for a spot rather than hand a job for the full year. I don't think he's earned that,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Another big name we haven't talked about is Aaron Rodgers. Um, I thought it'd be interesting for him to go to the Colts because of the Indianapolis connection. Him and Pat McAfee, good friends in Indianapolis. But I don't think the Colts bring someone in to be the starter. I think they bring someone to compete. Aaron views himself as a starting quarterback. So with Aaron Rodgers not going to the Raiders, same thing with Russell Wilson. I don't know where he lands.
Skull Vikings.
All
I
you gotta say there. All you gotta
That's
say
it.
there.
That's it.
That's it. All right. Kirk Cousins, I brushed on briefly. I've heard reports he's not making a decision until after the draft. He doesn't want to happen. I mean, he's still under contract for the Falcons. So the Falcons could keep him and not move him, have the backup Michael Penix. Kirk Cousins, I've never heard anything bad about him as in the locker room,
Yeah,
as a
no.
teammate or anything like that. If he's have to get released. Obviously, no one's going to take on that massive contract of him, so he could sign a league minimum. The Browns, I just don't think if they draft a quarterback, he's going to want to go there. So those three veteran quarterbacks you look at, Cousins, Rogers, Wilson, two-part question. If you had to pick one, who are you picking for your quarterback? And then two, where's the landing spot for any of those three?
So, I've touched on the Aaron Rodgers thing already, so I'll kind of leave it at that with Aaron Rodgers.
Mhm.
I think Minnesota makes a lot of sense, and I feel like that roster is very win now. If Kevin O'Connell could go 14-3 with Sam Darnold, who again, he was a journeyman, from the Jets to the Panthers to the 49ers, right? I feel like he could look at Aaron Rodgers and say, in my scheme, I think you know, you can do better and I can get more. And maybe he won't choke in big moments in the dome that they built in Minneapolis, right? So I feel like
Yeah.
that's just, for me, it's a no-brainer. I think Cousins, if he's going to wait until after the draft, that actually kind of leads into how I feel about the Browns taking Shedeur Sanders #2. I don't know if he goes to the Browns anymore. I think with them restructuring Deshaun's contract again in Cleveland, it freed up some space in order to re-sign Myles Garrett. But I don't think that they spend that much money on their players if they don't have a draft plan for a quarterback. And
Mhm.
I don't know if you can tell by my background, the pennant or the hat I have on, but I think, highly of the Denver Broncos. And I think what they did when they cut Russell Wilson, well, gave him
Yeah.
to the Steelers and retained a
That
salary.
situation happened. They,
Right,
they they pay him to play for us.
right. They did that, but then they drafted a quarterback. And what we just proved this last season was if you can sign a bad quarterback deal, you can rinse that if you go out and you get a quarterback on a rookie deal and you
Mhm.
just eat that hit at the beginning. If you hit on that quarterback in the draft, you can go to the playoffs and get blown out by the Buffalo Bills. All right. There is a blueprint for that now. So I feel like the Cleveland Browns, they are so handcuffed with the Deshaun Watson deal. I don't think Myles Garrett signs for just, hey, here's 40 million a year. I think they told him what their plans are because
Yeah.
they feel like they can compete. They need someone consistent back there. And I think that Cleveland actually takes Shadur Sanders. I know that there's a lot of people that think he's a distraction or because of the watch, he's very much about his image. He's a Sanders, so that's kind of always going to be a part of who he is. But when he was at CU the last 2 years, you heard nothing about him getting in trouble partying. You heard nothing about him getting into any kind of legal issues. He was a college kid that played ball. And I personally think that Cleveland putting him on that roster with the weapons that they do have, right? I don't know if they re-signed their tight end, but they just extended Jerry Jeudy. I saw a lot of Shadur Sanders to Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, Joel, Shadur Sanders to Jerry Jeudy would probably look just as good. I think that Kevin Stefanski has figured out how to use Jerry Jeudy in his offense. I think he just needs a quarterback that can consistently be back there and develop with Jeudy. And I think they're looking at this like, we cannot get out of this Deshaun Watson contract yet. We're going to move stuff around so we don't lose Myles Garrett. Hey, Myles Garrett, with the number 2 overall pick, we're actually drafting a quarterback so that you don't have to sit through another season of just guessing on who's going to start for you that week. I think that's the direction they're going. So, yeah, my Cleveland Browns Kirk Cousins thing, that's kind of in the drain. I could see him if the Titans don't get a quarterback with the top. If they go Carter or, Hunter, maybe if they're running it back with, Levis, maybe Kirk Cousins says like, hey, I'll go to Tennessee. Because then they could say like, oh, yeah, Kirk, you're going to compete here for a starting job, but you're going to get the first team reps and you can learn behind Cousins. I could see that. It's a weak division in the same way you think that someone could go to Indianapolis. I mean, it's besides the Texans, you have a lot of teams that just underperform. So maybe Cousins chooses Tennessee if they don't draft a guy. But it's
I think
for sure.
I think the only way the Browns get out of the Deshaun deal is drafting a rookie quarterback and then kind of following suit with the Broncos. But you need to get the rookie quarterback in there, and then the restructuring is great. The only problem is you're creating more dead cap in the future. So you're kind of snowballing your bad decision down the road a little bit. But if you rookie quarterback, you have 5 years of cheapness. You can kind of afford to kind of eat some of that.
And that's what happened with Denver when they did this deal. They took a $50 million, dead cap hit with Russell Wilson's contract in year 1, and then they only have to take 30 million some odd of dead cap this year, and then next year they're clean. So on a rookie deal with Bo Nix, the first year was like, all right, let's see how he does. Next year is going to be all about growth, but then year 3. I mean, if you went in as a rookie to the wild card round, right, just trying to feel it out, you should still improve this next season. And then season 3, you're going to have all that cap to, start putting some pieces together, making some moves.
Yep. Moving away from quarterback a little bit is the most important position, not the only position. What free agent, if any free agent besides quarterback, interests you the most for the Broncos, or are you the most interested in to knowing where they land? So kind of top names I've seen on the top free agent market: Javon Holland, former safety for the Dolphins; Chris Godwin from the Buccaneers; Khalil Mack from the Chargers; Joey Bosa from the Chargers; DJ Reed from the Jets; Amari Cooper from the Bills. Stephon Diggs from the Texans. Any of those names interest you for the Broncos or just in general, or somebody that's all obviously just scratching the surface of the free agents this year? Who are you most interested to see going somewhere, and who would be the top guy you see for the Broncos?
So I've been high on J.K. Dobbins for a while. I think he looked really good with Harbaugh in L.A. this last year.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it if the Broncos snagged him now that he's fully healthy, get him in. I know Aaron Jones re-signed with Minnesota today, so I know he's out.
Yep.
Personally, I think Dobbins would be great. Najee Harris, I feel like he and Javonte Williams are too similar, so I don't think that
Without the injury concern, Najee doesn't get hurt.
He doesn't get hurt, but they're just too similar of a player, and I think that Sean Payton – he had critiqued Javonte Williams, like his not necessarily his physique, but had kind of critiqued, like where he wanted him to be as far as weight and
Yeah.
everything and explosiveness. I think Najee Harris is too much of the same thing. I feel like they can go to the
Yeah.
draft if they really wanted to get that again.
Yeah.
Um, I
I
think
don't see Najee going to Denver. I think Najee goes. Sorry, out of turn here. Cowboys, but neither here nor there. Continue on.
Oh, I was just saying, as far as wide receiver goes, I know that the Denver Broncos really want to re-sign Cortland Sutton. I
Yeah.
don't know if they really go into the wide receiver market. I know that there's a lot of guys that are looking to be traded, but as far as
Mhm.
wide receiver, just in free agency, Chris Godwin's interesting, depending on how he's looking after that injury. But everybody else, I would say that if the Broncos are going to do anything, they're going to basically get who they wanted with Josh Reynolds. So, like Josh Reynolds last year, obviously he was their free agent signing to kind of be like that depth guy. He
Yeah.
got that very freak accident injury that happened to where,
Mhm.
as soon as he was healthy, he was actually gone. They didn't need him anymore, right? So
Yeah.
I'm looking at the wide receiver class. I'm not seeing anybody that really fits what they're doing. The Broncos
Yeah.
just went through a massive youth movement with their wide
Mhm.
receiver room. And with
Yeah.
Marvin Mims having the year that he did, Vele was a Tim Patrick replacement. Tim
Yep.
Patrick was healthy. He was a preseason cut day guy to where they felt like they had enough to where they didn't need him anymore. And Cortland Sutton last year had, 81 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns with Knicks, right? So
Mhm.
I think they look at that as he's 29. They could give him some sort of an extension and have that be the guy that they pay and then
Yeah.
continue being young at the wide receiver room, right? They didn't. I know they had conversations for Debo Samuels, but I just don't think they're going that route either.
Yeah.
I
Do you see them going early in the draft for the receiver then to kind of continue the youth movement? Because Bailey is great, but Bailey is a 27-year-old rookie, right?
right,
So he's not one classified as
28 year,
young. Do
right.
you think that if they don't do one in free agency, it kind of pushes to the first round, if like a Mecca Buka falls to them that 20 slot?
So one thing I would say is this: I know a lot of people in Denver would love Genty as the pick for the Broncos. Two things in my mind that kind of go against that. One, I don't think that Genty is going to fall to 20. Two, George Payton, when he was the assistant general manager with the Minnesota Vikings in the second round, drafted Dalvin Cook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he is probably looking at running back in the draft high, but like a day two guy. As
Yeah.
far as wide receiver, I would say that it kind of depends on who falls to them, right? I
Yeah.
know that they like Loveland, the tight end. At
Mm-hmm.
least everything that I see and read about it makes it seem like they
Yeah.
love him. But as far as what he did bring to Michigan's offense, I think he could bring a lot more to Denver.
Yeah.
I feel like he's actually in the right scheme, he could be a dynamic threat, right? He's one of those guys where it's like he's a wide receiver at the tight end position, at least what I've seen of him.
Yeah.
So I could see
Would
them
you
going.
prioritize that tight end position over a number two wide receiver? If Loveland and Abuka both sitting there, 'cause I think Abuka is probably the receiver most likely to fall in that late teens 20 round. That's why I'm kind of using him as an example. Maybe Isaiah Bond or something like that could as well. But we'll say Mikabuku as a placeholder. Would you take there with the Loveland still there? Would you take Loveland tight end over the wide receiver?
So I selfishly would take the tight end, and the only reason I would do that is because we haven't had a tight end in Denver since 2013 and 2014 when we had Julius Thomas.
Yeah.
And when we had that mismatch over the middle of the field, it was dynamic. And it was something that I haven't seen since in the blue and orange, right? So I personally think that Sean Payton and who he is, he remembers how well Drew Brees looked with Jimmy Graham. I think that's what they're looking at more. But it depends on what they do in free agency. I know Juwan Johnson, the Saint tight end, he's regarded as the top tight end available, right? And I know he's familiar with Sean Payton. Maybe he goes there and then they feel comfortable having him as the tight end and then they go wide out in the first round. But it just kind of depends on what happens tomorrow and this week. I just
So
think
one thing
that
I did see about Jawan Jennings, he brought his name. I think he was released for medical reasons, so I could put a hamper in that.
it
He was
could.
released for medical reason, which has something to do with the contract and stuff as well.
The
But yeah, I
Saints
think the
also
tight end.
the
I
Saints also
think
can't get any salary cap relief where they can
yes.
get it.
I feel like you can get. Well, when my pushback would be, I feel like you can get a decent tight end, and Evan Ingram, Jawan Jennings, something like that in free agency. Not pay crazy money with a wide receiver. Once you get past the top 2 or 3 names, it drops off pretty tough. Godwin's there. Amari Cooper doesn't feel like he really fits there. Um, Stephon Diggs doesn't seem like he fits there. Um, I think you continue that youth movement in the draft. You can kind of sign a proven tight end a little bit in the free agency if I was the Broncos. But I'm not the Broncos fan.
And like I said, it's me selfishly just remembering how
Yeah,
great it was when Denver had a tight end. And, I we talked earlier this week about Bo Nix versus Jaden Daniels stats and how they
yeah,
stacked up side by side, and that Bo Nix actually had quite a few important stats that he was better
yeah,
than Jaden Daniels. But Jaden
yep,
Daniels make it to the NFC Championship game,
yep,
and what I watched in those playoffs were, when in doubt, throw it to Zach Ertz.
yep.
Broncos
Who
haven't
did
had
we
it.
sign back with the Commanders? He's coming back. Bring the news up. He is coming back to the Commanders. So yeah, I agree with you. I think they need a tight end in the position there. I think you nailed it for sure.
Selfishly,
Um,
I just wish they would
some,
do
I mean,
something.
it makes sense. Get the young guy who can grow with Bo Nix. I mean, you see what that quarterback tight end relationship looks like with Kansas City, with San Francisco, even with Baltimore. Mark Andrews always there for him now. Isaiah Likely is going to take that spot over. It looks like having that safety net is so big for the quarterback. Have someone young. You see, it didn't work out as great as they wanted to, but the Colts did that back in the day when they had Andrew Luck. They brought in Colby Fleener, his tight end from college, create that quarterback tight end relationship from the very beginning, give him a safety net to do. That makes a lot of sense for that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the in kind of free agent stuff looks like there. For the Steelers' perspective, I'm gonna go kind of talk about that. I think obviously DK Metcalf is the guy we had. We needed a receiver. I don't think they're done yet though. I think it opens up some possibilities for us still. I don't think this eliminates us going back to the free agent well to grab somebody like a Darius Slayton. He seems like a Pittsburgh Steel type of guy. I think Pittsburgh could go there for sure. I'm also not ruling out a trade of George Pickens. I think DK Metcalf, George Pickens are very similar. DK Metcalf's obviously older than George Pickens, but I think they play a very similar role. I don't. I think Pittsburgh is very hesitant to give money to players who are problems. We saw a big issue with Antonio Brown. Once they gave him the bag, it got kind of weird. So I can see George Pickens still being traded and bring in Darius Slayton and come in the year with a complete new wide receiving core with DK Metcalf, Darius Slayton. You keep Calvin Austin, the rookie Roman Wilson we did this year. I think it does. DK Metcalf does remove Pittsburgh from drafting a receiver in the first round.
I
I
think so
don't think
too.
they go that position. I think they go with a go D line. That's what we really need. We need to eventually find a replacement for Cam Hayward. Keanu Ben needs to move outside to the DM spot and get that D tackle in there. He's a penetrator. He's a penetrator, not a gap block like the new with that big
Yeah,
nose tackle. I don't think I was high on him signing a D tackle earlier in the offseason. I'm not sure if they go there. I think they're with the big money DK. I think it takes some positions off the board for them. I
Probably
think
does.
D
Yeah.
tackle is one of those positions that they view in the draft they can kind of fill. Because they do need to get a number two receiver to help Joey Porter out. I do like Dante Jackson staying there, but if not him, another veteran presence. Asante Samuel would be good. He's a free agent, as well as Nate Hobbs to play that slot position. Would be nice. He's the same age as our rookie Beanie Bishop from last year, but with years of experience. I think he makes a big Nate Hobbs make a big trade, big acquisition, and then we signed Dante Jackson as the outside corner, kind of help solidify that position to go there. That's how I view the Pittsburgh. Outside the Steelers, looking over the free agent class, there's nobody super exciting that I'm like, oh man, that's interesting. Outside the quarterbacks, of course, I think every signing super interesting, but looking at my list, nobody really screams to me like, man, this is gonna be a game changer if this guy signs here. Even like a Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, they're interesting. I don't know if they're game changers in their older age now. I think they make an impact on a team, but I think they're going to go to teams who already are really good. I think looking for a championship based on their age. So I don't think they're going to be, you know, make a not great team a
Right.
Super Bowl contender. I think it moves somebody up a little bit. Probably one of them goes to Buffalo, if I had to guess. Buffalo just released Von Miller. Probably one of those two guys goes in to help fill that position in Buffalo, if I had to guess. Um, that's kind of the free agent look like we got going on there. So rest of the time we next this week's gonna be crazy, in the NFL for sure. I'm interested to see what goes on there. It's gonna be super interesting. I'm excited to see who signs where the quarterbacks go. We'd mentioned it. Darnold, what's he gonna do? Is a big linchpin. Once he falls, I think the rest of the landscape is gonna be a lot clearer on that. But we want to move on a little bit just from NFL. We love all sports. We
NBA and NHL playoffs are kicking off. I do have a lot to talk about as far as what the Avalanche have done, but not only them, but what the Dallas Stars, for example, have done. The terrible management of their roster that the Carolina Hurricanes did. I have a lot of
the
thoughts on.
abysmal Pittsburgh Penguins. They're just trading everybody and everything.
Your Penguins are doing good, Joel. I
No,
was
we're
really
not.
want to
Don't
see.
lie.
Yeah, a lot of people in Denver wanted Sidney Crosby to come to Colorado, even though it wasn't going to happen. It was a nice pipe dream. Um, but yeah, we got a lot
We
to
have
talk about
DK
with the
Metcalf.
NBA.
We're good. We have
Yeah,
DK Metcalf. The season on a high. We're ending on a high. We're good. Penguins can live in misery again, but we have DK Metcalf.
you have DK Metcalf. I can't wait to see what jersey you get. So, but yeah,
But that's gonna wrap up for this one, guys. Appreciate everyone joining us. Like the video. There'll be more to come. We're gonna try to do as regular as possible. Get these out. We appreciate it. Yins have been great. Thanks again. Have a good one, guys.